You need any last minute sustenance? Yeah. Any last minute libations?
My water had cat hair in it, so.
Oh. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Ride Home Podcast. My name is Abby.
Hey, guys, it's Caitlin.
We are doing another at-home podcast. Apparently, we're not leaving the house this Christmas break. We're just shut-ins.
Just hermits.
Yeah. We've been very much enjoying Christmas break.
Lazy and loving it.
Yes. And part of our Christmas break was to watch a movie that had a limited release over Thanksgiving weekend and just Thanksgiving weekend, which I thought was unusual. Mm-hmm. And then they put it on Netflix, which is the sequel to a Knives Out. Mm-hmm. And it is Glass Onion, a Knives Out mystery. Which, first of all, did they really have to do a Knives Out mystery?
Right.
I'm not sure if that was,
I guess they're like trying
necessary.
to like continue with the branding of it being Knives Out.
Right.
But I'm not sure that they had to do that.
I don't think they had to at all. I mean,
like we saw Daniel Craig in the promos. We get it.
I think Daniel Craig with the most like heavy Southern accent in the history of time just is like, oh, okay, this is Knives Out.
Right. You don't have to tell us it's Knives Out.
We hey guys, it's Knives Out.
Hey guys, just in case.
Just FYI.
It's a Knives Out mystery.
It was written and directed by the same writer-director from the first one, who is Rian Johnson, who I actually am like a pretty big fan of. Have you ever seen Looper? No? Okay. You probably haven't seen half of these. He did a recent Star Wars.
I've only seen Knives Out.
I think you've seen just Knives Out. I mean, I think you saw The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure you did. But I really enjoyed Looper, and I think you would enjoy Looper too. And I enjoyed Brick. He's a very original writer, and he has a very interesting way of telling all of his stories. They all have like a little bit of a weird timeline to each one of them. And so I think I have just enjoyed his movies thus far that I have seen. The brief synopsis, always from Google with no spoilers, is tech billionaire Miles Braun invites his friends for a getaway on a private Greek island. When someone turns up dead, Detective Benoit Blanc is put on the case. So Benoit Blanc is obviously played by Daniel Craig, like we said. And then the rest of this cast is just like action packed. Like this is a massive cast, a very expensive cast. The tech billionaire Miles Braun is played by Edward Norton. And then his friends that he gathers on this island are played by Kate Hudson, Catherine Hahn, Janelle Monáe, Dave Bautista, Leslie Odom Jr. It's just a whole conglomerate of who's who.
Quite a cast and crew.
Yes. There were also some little cameos, which they aren't spoilers because they're on IMDb, but there was a small cameo by Hugh Grant. There was a small cameo by Angela Lansbury.
Ethan Hawke
had a small cameo. Serena Williams, Natasha Lyonne. So it basically was just a large gathering of, you recognize basically everybody on the screen, minus like 2 or 3 smaller characters.
Right.
It is obviously a sequel to a Knives Out, but it's the only thing that continues from that first story is Benoit Blanc.
Right.
So it's not a continuation really of that family's story.
Right. It's just a sequel in the fact that it's a similar idea with the same detective.
Right. So kind of like the Agatha Christie. I forget what his name is with the mustache.
Poirot.
Yes.
Yeah.
Basically it's him, but a southern.
But we call it Knives Out instead.
Yeah. So that being said, I know that it is going to be very hard to not compare this to the first one.
Yeah.
Which we definitely can. But in just this first part right here, I'm going to do what I normally do and ask you your thoughts and feelings. Try and remove any comparisons from the first one.
Okay, well, all my first thoughts and feelings were comparing it to the first one.
Okay, so scratch that.
That's hard. That's hard for me. No, I can do it. Okay, so just as a movie itself.
Yeah. If this was just
I had never seen Knives Out and I just watched this, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun to watch.
Yeah.
I thought it was very quick-witted. Yeah. And easy to follow once we put the subtitles on.
We literally like halfway through the movie, I was like,
It's just like in movies like this, there's just a lot of like pieces and parts. Like there's a lot of players, there's a lot of like names of things.
Yeah.
And like it's hard to keep track of all of that. So like I would recommend, if you do, obviously you have to watch this at home now.
There's a lot of like techie speak, because it is a tech billionaire, and like the company that he runs and that all these people are like associated with has like a lot of tech involved. And so we got lost pretty quick and just threw on the subtitles, and from that point on we were fine.
Yeah, it was very helpful to have them. So I would say all in all, like I thought it was a really good movie. I thought it was fun, and it was a fun watch. I don't really know what else to say. I think it was fun.
Yeah. I think for me, it is the movie form of one of those crime novels that is specifically branded for women, like Gillian Flynn, which they even mention her name in this movie. It was a little more elementary, I guess, than I would say I was expecting, because Rian Johnson is a pretty complex writer usually. And I thought it was a really simple story, but it was fun, and it was really easy to watch. And I thought that the characters were really enjoyable in their own individual ways. But I think, that being said, the characters were all extreme versions of people. They weren't at all real people or real characters, or
really even fully developed characters,
really genuine. There wasn't really much meat and potatoes behind any of this movie. That being said, it was still a really fun movie to watch.
That's the thing. I think it was like, for me, it just like, I liked it and I enjoyed it and I thought it was really fun, but it was like kind of like, it was like a surface level mystery movie for me.
Very surface.
That's kind of my hang up. And then we can, I guess, get into the comparison hang ups later. Because I'm not really showing all of my cards right now, because I have a lot of things that I have.
And as always, we will remind you when it's spoiler time. And so this first part, we will not give away any spoilers. So if you haven't seen the movie yet, you can listen up until the little elevator music. I will say one thing that I personally hated, and I think some people might like it and might think it's funny. For me, I thought it just took away a lot from the story, and it just kind of irked me because it didn't really serve much of a purpose, was the COVID storyline. They didn't have to make these like little nods to the COVID experience, because the whole first 20 minutes of the movie was basically these individual characters all on lockdown, and like Benoit Blanc was like sitting in his bathtub on a Zoom call. And I was just like, I didn't need that. It didn't do anything for me, and it wasn't really funny. And I think like 2 years after the fact, like the joke is gone at this point. You know what I mean? They were playing like Among Us. And
and like it felt pretty irrelevant. And also it was kind of a throwaway, because like you said, it was really that first 20 minutes. And then they never talked about COVID or mentioned COVID again.
And they didn't need to be in lockdown to go to this man's private island. Like if your friend invites you to his private island, you're going whether or not you're on lockdown or not. You're going to go hang out on a private island in Greece. So I didn't think that was necessary at all.
I agree with you.
I think it honestly took away a lot. And especially considering this movie was approximately a half hour too long. If they just took out that storyline and just gave us that very first scene of all of them getting invited to the island, they could have just started with that.
And they could have just been like doing what they normally are doing. Like it didn't have to be like they're all on lockdown doing COVID things like Zoom calls and bathtubs and COVID parties.
And even Benoit Blanc was like, well, I haven't had a case in so long and I'm so bored. And it's just like, he could have
had that without COVID. Like it could have just been a while. Like,
and also it also didn't need to be that it's been a while. He could have just gotten the case and gone and done the case. I don't know. There was just kind of some throwaway things at the beginning that I just didn't really think added to literally anything. And so I was a little frustrated by that, because I didn't like the first 20 minutes of the movie, and I was like, oh my god, is this going to be the whole movie? Is just little COVID jokes? And luckily, like we said, after they get on the island, there's like barely any speak of COVID. And so luckily I was able to enjoy the movie after that fact.
I'll agree with you on that. I think that it could have been set up a whole different way that would have just been smarter and funnier, honestly.
Yeah.
I think it took away from some of the jokes.
Yeah.
Because there were other jokes in that whole setup scene that weren't COVID related.
That were hilarious.
That were really funny.
Yeah.
And there were like little moments where we got to see each of the characters and like a piece of their personality, which were really smart and funny. And it was like, why couldn't we just have had that and scrap the whole COVID thing?
Exactly.
So I totally am with you on that.
Yeah. I also think that I was really distracted, and I don't know if you feel the same way, because obviously we've had this discussion before about you don't really notice technical things as much as I do, but I'm interested to see if you think anything about this. What did you think of the cinematography?
I thought that it was trying to do something that it didn't need to do, and I don't know how to explain it. What is the movie that it reminded me of? The Big Short. In like movies like that, it kind of like with the little cutaways and like the little like split screens and
the zoom in and the zoom outs. So my biggest issue with the cinematography wasn't necessarily that, which I agree was like doing a little too much at times, but half of it looked like it was shot on an iPhone to me.
Okay.
Because they would have these really extreme close-ups of a character where their face was really almost distorted, like it was like you were looking at them at a weird angle, and then everything behind them was still in focus. And so I don't know if that was like a purposeful thing, like you're supposed to be watching everything on the screen, like you're supposed to be like, well, you can't leave everything out of focus because you need to watch to see if there's clues in the background. I don't know if that was the point, but it made for a really hideous movie to look at. The lighting was harsh. There were scenes where there was like giant shadows on the walls. One person was heavily lit, and then like Ed Norton's face was completely in shadows. Like there was a scene where you couldn't even see his face, and not really for any reason. And I thought it just felt sloppy. And I don't know if it was like they were doing it on purpose. Like I said, like, oh, you need to make sure you're looking at everything, so everything's in focus. But to me, it just looked like it didn't have any attempt to be attractive and aesthetically pleasing. And it was just like, let's just throw this story on a screen real quick.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I didn't pick up on any of that. The only thing I will say, like, technically that I noticed is, like, the color was very saturated.
Yes.
I didn't really pick up on any lighting things, but then again, you were, like, in lighting for, like, years of your life.
Right.
So, like, of course, you would notice that.
Right.
But I did notice that the color was very weirdly saturated.
The color was saturated, the exposure was odd, and the framing also, a lot of their shots, the person was framed in the center of the screen, but not fully centered. Like it wasn't, I've seen movies where they can really, for example, See How They Run, utilize the centering of the person where it felt like they were being interrogated by the audience almost. And they didn't even like look directly into the screen. They were just framed in the center.
Sure.
And it was like they did that, but they were still slightly off frame, like this, like a little bit into the other third of the screen. And I had to make a choice. It was about a third into the movie, and it was during a pool scene, and like the lighting was so harsh and disgusting that I literally said to myself, stop thinking about it and just watch the movie.
Okay.
So if you are planning to watch this movie and you are a little bit of like a technical critic, tell yourself at the beginning, just ignore it. Just ignore it.
I'm going to speak up for the average viewer and just say I didn't notice shit about the lighting.
Right.
So I don't think most people like me who are just like an average movie watcher would not pick up on that. I think they would maybe pick up on some of the more obvious things that I picked up on. But obviously, like you said, if you're really technical and like notice things like that and know a lot about that, you will notice it. But I think you're right. You have to just kind of like dispel any of that
out. Yep.
And just watch it.
And like I said about my initial review, it's like reading a crime novel. You can't judge the writer on whether or not they're like a beautiful writer, like with wonderful descriptions. You're just reading those books for the story.
I'm going to say something right now, which might upset some of the people that listen to our podcast.
No. I think I know what you're going to do.
This is the Colleen Hoover of crime movies.
Yes. Yep.
I'm sorry to anybody who likes Colleen Hoover, but we have to all just say she's not a good writer.
Girly Pop cannot write.
She's not like an esteemed
no
writer. Okay, so like she's able to weave stories that people are captured by and get hooked on, but it's not actual good writing.
Correct.
And this is what that movie was.
Which, now if we can go into our comparison of this movie to the original.
Yeah.
The original was a good movie.
Yes.
The characters were really fleshed out and they felt like actual people.
Yes.
So like Ana de Armas, I don't know if I'm butchering her name, but like she was amazing in it. And her entire character felt so real, and her connection to and her scenes with Christopher Plummer were so good. That family structure as a whole, even though they had ridiculous moments, they very much played as like a real, like super wealthy family that's all selfish.
Full of issues.
Full of issues. And the cast was just as big and bold. Like it was Chris Evans, Jamie Lee Curtis, Toni Collette, Michael Shannon, Christopher Plummer, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, like these huge names just like this one. But the characters in this one were not real people.
Right.
Were caricatures. And this was so much more of a full-blown comedy with little pieces of detective work, where the first one was
mostly a mystery
with some comedy. And the comedy was darker.
Yep.
And more realistic.
And smarter.
It was like a person watched the first movie and then wrote their own little Knives Out tale with Benoit Blanc. Yes.
Yeah.
And when I saw that Rian Johnson wrote this one and directed this one, I was like, hold on a second. How did he go from the first Knives Out to this one?
Right.
Because it was a different tone, a different timeline, the way he told the story.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow, this is really interesting. I'm glad you agree with me.
I totally agree with you. The first one was significantly better, in my opinion.
Night and day.
And for all of the reasons you just said, like, I think it was just a better movie.
Yeah.
It was better written. It was better lit, better filmed, better directed, better acted.
Yes,
like, I don't
1000%.
know. I think it was just...
And you know what? Before we get into the spoiler section, the mystery was better.
That's another one of my notes that I had written down. The mystery itself was so much more complex and interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like it was like more messed up.
Without giving anything away, and I literally will not give anything away, the mystery in this one was so simple that I looked over at Caitlin and said, well, it has to be that person, right? And then I said... But no, that would be too obvious.
You're like, but it couldn't, because that's too simple and obvious.
Because that's too simple and obvious.
And then it was. And then we were both just like, really? Like,
yeah.
Wow.
So we felt a little deflated at the end. So I would say, to wrap up the non-spoiler section, and I think you'll agree with me, the first half hour, awful. The whole middle hour, great fun, a good time, raucous, one might say.
Right.
And then the last half hour, another round of awful.
Could have done without it.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that's when we find out the answer, but like really could have done without it.
Really could have done without it. And it got a little like obtuse and bombastic at the end where just everything...
It fell apart.
Yeah. So I think overall, again, I'm going to say it, definitely worth a watch. It's fun. Sure. You're sitting at home watching Netflix, and you know, it was like The Gray Man, you know, that movie that we watched, where it's just like, it doesn't have to be a good movie to enjoy it.
No.
This was not a good movie, but I enjoyed it.
Sure.
For sure.
It was fun.
So what is your popcorn rating?
I think for me, it's going to be a medium, not because of the quality of the movie, but just because of how much I enjoyed watching it.
Yeah.
So obviously, like we weren't doing the podcast when the original Knives Out came out, but that would be a large for me.
Oh, absolutely.
And this is definitely a medium, but it's like kind of a skimpy medium.
I 1000% agree with you.
It wasn't so bad that I'm going to give it a small.
Yeah.
Just technicality wise, probably it would be a small.
Yeah.
But because I enjoyed watching it so much, I'm just going to give it a medium.
I completely agree with you. And I think that if I didn't tell myself at the beginning to like shut my brain up and to stop judging it, it would have been an extra small. I was really struggling in the first half hour. But I think when I put that aside and I just enjoyed the cast of characters for what they were, and I just stopped trying to be like, okay, like these have to be similar to what the Knives Out actors gave us. Once I accepted that it was a comedy and that these were caricatures and this was a little bit on the edge of like not at all being believable, not even the edge, this isn't believable.
No.
So like once I put those thoughts aside, I really did enjoy it and thought it was fun, and there were some really funny moments. And so I will also give it a skimpy medium. Like maybe you popped your own bag at home and put it in your purse, but it's a lot of popcorn, but like you brought it in your purse.
I'm sorry. Sorry, Glass Onion.
Sorry, Glass Onion. Sorry. All right, everybody. Welcome back to, I'm just going to start calling it the Caitlin portion of the podcast.
Okay.
Caitlin's ready.
Caitlin's Corner.
Yeah. Caitlin's Corner. From now on, everything we talk about will involve spoilers. We will talk about who the killer is. We will talk about everything. So please turn off this portion of the podcast if you haven't seen the movie or you plan to. It's a whodunit, so spoilers. So like, this is the most important
thing. We're going to tell you who did it.
Yeah. So, all right, and we're going to tell you who did it in 3, 2, 1. I can't believe they made fucking Miles Braun the killer. Out of all the people there, they could have done something really interesting. They could have made it be that the twin sister, who is Janelle Monáe, was like killing people off while she was there to get revenge. They could have had it be Whiskey, who is Dave Bautista's kind of like sweet and innocent girlfriend that's, you know, trying to build her brand and platform. But like, as we've had little peeks and scenes where she's actually like a good person, right? Where they could have had it be a twist that she's been playing all of them at the same time and is getting hers. I literally could make up 600 different plots, and I think anybody else could, that were more interesting than Miles fucking Braun being the killer.
Yeah.
Clearly I'm upset.
You are upset. It was even like obvious for me. Yeah. And like, that's the thing, is like, I never figure a mystery out.
Right. Yeah.
I really don't. Because I'm just simple. And it's
not that you're simple. You turn your brain off when you watch movies. Right. And you just let it happen.
Right.
And so whenever I'm just like, oh, I know who the killer is, you're always like, how the fuck do you know?
Yeah. And I'm always pissed because I feel stupid because I don't.
You're not stupid.
But it's like, I'm just experiencing the movie.
Yes.
I'm just experiencing the movie. I'm just watching it and ingesting it. And I'm not digesting it at the same time. So this time though, when you said, you were like, it's going to be him? Or you said, I can't remember like how you said it. You're like, it can't be Miles. And I was like, yeah, right. Like
I looked up, they were doing the little notepad where Janelle Monáe's character was writing like who has motive and who had opportunity. And she was like basically playing Clue.
Right.
Which they made a joke that she was playing Clue.
Yes.
And when they were doing that and she kept crossing people's names off, they never talked about Miles when they were like crossing the names off, or they would like briefly mention him, but then they would go to other people. And I was just like, wait a second, why are we not talking about Miles? Right. First of all, because he has the most reason out of anybody. And on top of that, when you find out halfway through the movie that Janelle Monáe's character is actually her twin sister, and they know, Benoit Blanc and Janelle Monáe both know that she is not Andy.
Right.
That she is Helen.
Right.
After the audience finds that out, the clear and obvious person should be Miles.
Right. Because who else would it be?
Right. And so I think like I was just really confused by the entire reveal and the whole path that we got there. It felt like they were setting us up for a really fun twist. Thing. Yeah. And like there were small scenes where, and this was built into like the original Knives Out. Obviously it's in every whodunit, where like each character looks a little suspicious in their own way. And I thought that they had the opportunity to surprise us with somebody who was like as simple as like whiskey, or honestly, Catherine Hahn. I love her with my entire heart, and she could have played a perfect, hilarious, unhinged final scene where she's revealed as the killer.
Right.
She's like the perfect person for that.
Yes.
And they wasted her. They wasted Catherine Hahn.
But you know what? I think this is the issue. The twist was not who the killer was.
Yeah.
The twist was that Janelle Monáe was not Andy.
And we found that out halfway through the movie.
Very early on. And then it was like, oh, like that part was cool because it was like, oh shit, she's dead, and like she has a twin sister. Granted, can I just say one thing about Janelle Monáe?
Of course, yeah.
It was a little bit of a miss for me.
Complete miss. Which, you know what's interesting?
Yeah.
The internet is loving her performance.
What?
I thought it was bad.
It was really bad.
There was a line when Benoit Blanc invites her to the island, and he's like, oh, I couldn't. Oh my God. Like, because he's having this idea of like bringing her to like as disguised as Andy. And he goes, what if you came to the island as Cassandra? And she looks at him and just goes, what? Like, says it like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you want me to come to the island? And I was like, whoa, Janelle.
Yeah,
Sweetie.
It was bad, and it was also the really bad Southern accent.
Yeah, that was rough
She kept dropping, like, mid-sentence sometimes.
Yeah,
like,
it would go in and out.
And she was supposed to be from Alabama, and it was not. Like,
no.
It was, I'm sorry, but, like, fucking Daniel Craig did a better Southern accent than her.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, Daniel Craig was one of the only, like, redeemable things about this movie. Like, him and some of the other cast members, their performances with what they had to work with were great.
Kate Hudson was hilarious.
Oh, my God.
The scene where she finds out that a sweatshop isn't where they make sweatpants, it's where, like... when her assistant looks at her and is like, wait, did you think a sweatshop is where they made sweatpants? And like that scene was absolutely hysterical. And also just all the nods to her being just a shitty white privileged, like me, doesn't even understand how you could have a sweatshop do your sweatpants, because she literally is the designer of sweatpants,
right?
And so there was an email where they're like, oh, by the way, this place in Bangladesh is a sweatshop, and she goes, okay, sounds good.
She says, perfect, sounds great.
So like that,
with a memoji of her dabbing, that was what her assistant's like, and it's a memoji of you dabbing.
So there were some really funny moments with her. Again, Catherine Hahn is fantastic in everything that she does. I think they could have played with her a little bit more. She played like a politician.
Sure.
Dave Bautista, first of all, what?
His scalp.
Is he like scarred? Because it looks like his brain is sitting on top of his head.
Exposed. His scalp is very disturbing to me. I don't know. It looks like a Shar-Pei.
Yeah.
But like not like I've seen bald men with like wrinkled heads, and it's not that.
I feel like it has to be scarring from when he was like a fighter. And there are so many close-ups of him again.
So many.
Again, with the really awkward downward angle. Yeah. So we saw his head a lot.
We had to look at his scalp a
because
lot.
I actually Googled what happened to his head, and everyone, there was no mention of like what exactly happened, but like the internet is talking about his head. But he's been in movies before. And so like this is the first time we've really noticed his head, which again is a nod to the cinematography in this was weird.
Yeah.
The angles were weird. Why were we looking at Dave Bautista's brain?
The top of his head. We shouldn't have seen it.
We were seeing his brain, his gray matter on screen.
We didn't need to.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
I think another performance that was good, but unfortunately, even though I like screamed about it at the beginning of the spoiler section, Ed Norton was great.
Yeah.
I mean,
I always love him.
He is so great. It's funny because he looks like he could be my uncle. He looks like members of my family. And so there were a lot of times I was really distracted because I was like, oh my God, he has my eyes. Like it like gave me like a panic because I felt like I was watching an uncle of mine play a tech billionaire.
What if you're related to Edward Norton?
I might be.
Could be.
I mean, it's very possible. He looks like my family.
He really does.
And so I was a little distracted by that at first because I haven't seen him in anything for a long time.
It's been a little bit.
But I mean, he's always great. I mean, there's rarely, I don't think I've ever seen him give a bad performance.
No, honestly.
And so even though I was upset that he was the killer and I didn't really enjoy that, I really loved his character. I immediately from the beginning picked up on what Benoit Blanc talks about later, which is all of his malapropisms, where he's just like saying the weirdest word in the weirdest place. And it was cracking me up the whole time. So I really enjoyed him. And honestly, like I really enjoyed Leslie Odom was really great. He looked amazing. Leslie Odom was like handsome AF.
He ate like the whole time. He just looked amazing.
I have never been attracted to him before this movie either. And then suddenly I was like, wait a second.
Something about the little suit he was wearing with like the lapel and the beard and the beard and just like the way he was, I don't know.
And the scientist, like the smart guy thing. Something happened with Leslie Odom Jr.
He had blow up or something.
It was nice to watch.
Yeah, we liked it.
Basically, we were fans of everybody but Janelle Monáe, which is so strange because everybody on the internet, before we saw it, I just kept seeing like, oh, she's so good in this.
But, you know, I have to say something else that probably will piss some people off.
Oh, no.
I think she's a little overrated.
I like her music a lot.
Yeah.
I love her music. I'm going to say that.
I think it's a little bit of like a Taylor Swift thing going on where it's like people
more
are really fans of her.
Yeah.
Like I know some people who are like true fans of hers. And it's like when you have that, you're a little bit biased, I think. Yeah. Like to be honest, like let's say I saw Timothée Chalamet give a horrible performance. I don't know it's possible for him to do that. But let's say he does. I would probably not notice it.
And you would make excuses.
And I would make excuses because I love Timothée Chalamet so much. And I think he's so good at acting that I would probably just be like, yeah, he was amazing.
It was so nuanced.
Yeah. And like, no, it wasn't. Like sometimes just people don't act well and that's okay.
I thought she was good in Moonlight. I love Moonlight's one of my it's my favorite drama of all time.
Right.
I thought she was really good in that. And for some reason, just her character was fine up until when we found out it was her twin. And then that balance of her playing the twin with Benoit and playing Andy without Benoit.
She didn't do it well.
It wasn't done well. And I think, to be fair to her, Rian Johnson should have paid more attention to that.
I was going to say some of that could have been a directing issue.
And I think there were so many things that happened throughout that felt just so clumsy. And unnecessary. And again, with the runtime being 2 hours and 20 minutes, I was just frustrated because I felt like they had the opportunity to tell a much better story in a much shorter period of time. And it just all blew up quite literally at the end.
Yeah.
When they pulled out that little piece of hydrogen, whatever. This tech company, plus Leslie Odom, who is the scientist who's developing it, plus Catherine Hahn, who's a politician who's signing off on the development of it. They're making this renewable energy made from like hydrogen that basically is unstable and could turn people's homes into a giant hydrogen bomb.
Right.
And the characters are all basically admitting to themselves that this bomb could kill people and could blow homes up.
Right.
But because they want the money, they're pursuing this anyway.
Anyways, yeah.
And the second they said that the home that they were at was run by that, I was like, all right, so when's the explosion gonna happen? Everything that happened was so predictable.
Yeah.
The fun part of a whodunit is when you find out who the killer was, and then they do these flashbacks where it's like you're putting all the pieces together and you're like, oh shit, like oh man, like it was that? That's crazy. And I even like when watching Death on the Nile, which was one of the worst movies I've seen this year, still had a brief moment at the end where I was like, oh shit, that's cool.
And that's, I think, my other, like, the only other issue that I did want to talk about is just the pacing of this movie. Because for me, it just took so long to get to any sort of a twist at all.
Well, here's the biggest spoiler that I forgot to mention at the beginning. We did not have a dead person until an hour and 15 minutes into the movie.
Right.
An hour and 15 minutes into a whodunit, we finally have a dead person.
That's what I'm saying. Why did it take so long?
You gotta kick off with the dead guy.
We had to have had a dead guy like way sooner than that. I did not appreciate that. And I think for me, like specifically me and other people with ADHD, like because I knew it was a whodunit, like it was pissing me off.
Yeah.
And because then you find out like the whole thing is like Edward Norton brings his friends there for like his murder. I thought that like he was going to be killed.
Yeah.
He was going to be killed and like we were going to have to figure out who killed him.
Right. You know what the timeline reminded me of? A really bad version of Prisoner of Azkaban. So you know when like, you know when you watch Hermione with her time turner or whatever it's called, and you watch them going through the scenes.
Yes.
And it's from like a different perspective. At that moment that Benoit Blanc says, well, we really need to find out who killed Cassandra. And basically that's the moment of like, oh shit. Like she's the dead guy.
Right.
So that the whole whodunit was this person that died weeks ago. Or not weeks ago, days ago.
Right.
And then after you find that out, you see all these, it was like we watched the whole movie again, but from the perspective of Helen being Andy instead of Andy being Andy. And so it was like Hermione was Helen.
Yes.
And I was sitting there and I was just thinking, okay, this could have been cool.
Right.
And I didn't mind, like I didn't hate it, but it also made for, like you said, a very awkwardly paced movie.
Yeah. And you know what? I just want to watch the first one again.
I adore the first one, so we can do that anytime you want. That being said, I know we're like really harsh on it in the spoiler section. We're really picking it apart. But here's the thing. If you watch this movie and you have zero plans of it being as good as the first one, if you have zero plans of it being anything more special than like a comedy whodunit,
right,
just go into it with an open mind and enjoy it, because again, really funny scenes, really funny characters. I'm still going to give it a medium, even though it's like a little bit hurting my heart.
Yeah.
Shocked and confused that the tomato meter is a 93%.
Very confused.
I think people are maybe doing the Taylor Swift thing or the Janelle Monáe thing, where it's like, oh, we just love Knives Out, so here's a 90%. We love it.
It should have been, for me, I would have given it more in like the 60s.
I would have given it a 72.
Okay, yeah.
A nice little watch when you're sitting at home doing nothing.
It's perfect for Christmas break.
Perfect for Christmas break.
Like, please watch it sometime over Christmas break.
With your home popcorn that you don't have to stuff in your purse.
Because no one wants to put popcorn in their purse.
Well, that does it for us. I'm sorry to anyone who loved this movie if we just like picked it apart for you. I'm so sorry. We really do hope that you enjoy it if you see it, and that you are enjoying your Christmas break, hopefully, if you have one. And if you don't, we just want to wish you a happy new year, because 2023 is right around the corner.
It's almost here.
I know we didn't start this podcast at the beginning of the year, but it does feel a little bit like we're wrapping up like a season almost, even though like the end of our season will probably be like Oscars for us.
Right.
But it feels nice to end the year and to start a new one. And we just want to thank everybody who's been listening and following along and participating in our Instagram polls and everything like that. So thank you guys. And
we love you.
Yeah. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And thanks for joining us on the ride home.